want to thank everybody for coming out on this lovely evening. This is Finance Listening 101. The goal here is for you folks to talk to us about how if you have any ideas for how to help us and the town financially. We're in dire straits, quite frankly, and we need all the help we can get. Hopefully somebody's got some ideas that we haven't come up with yet. I'm gonna run this meeting like it's a town meeting in that please wait to be recognized to speak. State your name. We have people on Zoom who are here. Everybody that's on Zoom is currently muted. If you want to speak, you have to raise your hand, and once you get recognized, you will be unmuted. Let's see. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, in addition to your suggestions, we'll do our best to answer them tonight. If we can, great. If we can't, we'll get you answers as quickly as we can. Jennifer, you said you would post stuff on town website?
Yep. Take down the questions and we'll work on responses and then we'll post it on the town website under town news.
Okay, and we'll maybe deal with them at our February 4th select board meeting. And if at any time tonight, whenever, if you have any issues you want to direct to any of us, we have our email addresses are on the town webpage. I'll be happy to talk to you on the phone, in person, however you want to do that. And before we get started, Jennifer's got a little slideshow that shows generally where we're at in our budget situation or our finance situation, not the budget so much. We don't have that prepared yet.
So this is just reiterating what Randy has already shared with us this evening. And then we promised y'all that we would talk about what changes we made with the failure of the override, and we did eliminate positions while we only had to lay off 2 fire EMS people. Oh, sorry.
Is this better? Okay. We did only have to lay off 2 actual firefighter EMS positions. We did not fill these additional positions, and we had 1 retirement out and we did not replace them when they retired. All of these are vacancies. This is how we were able to save employees for FY26. Going into FY27, we're going to have to look at other options, but that is not for tonight. Going to the next slide. This is just basic stuff here. Is that too loud? I'm showing the increase here for y'all to see how our health insurance increases have gone up from FY22 to FY26. It's pretty unprecedented upward trend, and it's looking like it's going to be the same for FY27. And then we have just a FY26 budget breakdown by department, so y'all can see where the funds are going. You can see education is a very large percentage, and then the next one is the employee benefits. And if you'll think back to the chart I just showed you for the increase in insurance, you'll see why it's such a large portion of our budget. And then this is our revenue resources. I'm sorry, Molly, you're supposed to be doing this. What? You want? Oh, okay. These are revenue sources. So this is how the town collects their funds. The property tax levy is obviously the biggest way that we bring in funds to fund the town. Then the local receipts, state aid, and then the enterprise receipts, which is your water, sewer, and Hadley Media. And these are our fund balances. Y'all are all very familiar with this. We show this at every town meeting. And so I'm going to leave this up here so you can see it for a few minutes, but I am not planning on reviewing all of those unless you specifically have a question about them later. And then we can discuss them in depth. And then turn this into the true spirit of a listening session. That's the entire slideshow that we have for y'all this evening.
Okay. So who wants? Oh, hold on, Seth. We have two emails or one email and one email who happens to be here. So Jennifer, you can read the email you have, please.
Okay, we did ask for residents if they were not able to attend tonight to submit their emails. So we received an email that says, I am concerned about the building of more housing options in Hadley, i.e. new 55+ housing with limitations of our fire, DPW, and other departments not having enough staff to deal with what is already on their plates. We are constantly increasing the workload on our town employees. What about putting the brakes on some of this development until they are paying their fair share of water, taxes, sewer, impact of traffic? What happened to the common sense of impact reports on the town before decisions are made? I am sick and tired of hearing about how low our taxes are when our property evaluations are going up constantly. Yet when the malls say they are losing money, their evaluations are lowered, and so is the amount of the taxes they pay. How about a report on the businesses that are costing our town the most money, i.e. police calls, fire, and ambulance calls? The voters and taxpayers need to have all the facts about what is going on in the town of Hadley and not just the information that you think we need to be educated on.
Seth?
I want to go back for a minute.
Go to the microphone, please.
The first slide seemed to say that you did not eliminate 9 positions and saved $600,000. And that math doesn't, I don't understand that math. Did I misunderstand something?
I said that those positions were eliminated because they were vacant at the time of the budget. And so we did not fill them with new employees because the current employees had either resigned and moved to a new job or had retired out of our position. So we just chose to save money by not filling the vacancies. You're welcome.
Dylan?
Oh, is that good?
Sure.
Okay. So I think I'm just going to read this verbatim, because I think it's a good, contrast to that first email. So first, my understanding of the town's current financial landscape is that our annual operating expenses are outpacing our income. We operate a budget without extra expenses. It's pretty trim. And the majority of our townspeople do not want an override. So we understood from the special town meeting. And there's also an overlap among people who do not want the override and who also don't want to cut essential positions. So my takeaway from all that is we can't do anything on the expense side. We don't want to cut anything more. Maybe we do. That will upset some people when we get essential things cut, like fire and like schools. And so I think we need to consider the income side. The most obvious thing is the override. We've decided that we don't want that option. So the next solution is growth. This is a growth mandate. If the no override voters said we don't want to increase expenses, we have to figure out how to increase income at some point, because those entitlements like healthcare are going to continue to cost this town money. The override is not going to solve anything. It's just a temporary thing. We need to figure out how to grow and increase our tax base. And so putting a stop to development is the opposite of the solution, in my opinion. I think we need to consider how we do grow smartly in this town, because businesses on Route 9 are going to be what's going to support us unless we want to pay more in our own real estate taxes. Let me see if I missed another point from on here. Oh, so my question is, what are we doing right now as a town with today's infrastructure and today's bylaws to increase our income at a rate that is matching the expense side? Is that something you guys are going to answer? Or are you just taking the questions tonight and posting on the website?
You know, I think we can try that. We may not have all the answers, but I
Okay.
mean, one of the issues is the 40R program that we're contemplating, and I think you
Yeah.
talked about that in your email. And for those of you who don't know what 40R is, it's a development scheme that will allow retail on the first floor and housing above it all on Route 9. We're working on trying to craft a bylaw for that. But that is, if it comes to fruition, that's years out. So that's not going to help us in the short term. And we do have a new over 55 that is, I don't know if it's completely approved by the planning board, but pretty close down at what used to be the Village Barns. And that, if it gets approved in the next month or two, they may start building towards the end of this year. They're going to be a year and a half at least out. So, I mean, there's money, revenue, tax revenue there, but that's not going to help us in the short term either.
Mhm.
And then there was what, the meals? Oh yeah, there's another one over at North Maple Street and Rocky Hill Road. That's in the planning process as well. So when that stuff comes on board, that should be a pretty hefty increase to the real estate role. And hopefully there won't be a huge burden on the fire and police services. But that remains to be seen.
And that project in particular, I know needs sewer to come to it, which is an investment we need to make in our town in order to open up opportunities to increase our income. So I would like the two committees to consider things that invest in this town to open up opportunities for more income. Because I think development, especially along Route 9, where we do have sewer existing, is going to be a path forward. However, as a person who works in development, it's a very long, slow process. It's really hard to get those dollars in our pocket anytime soon. And in this current financing environment, with interest rates the way they are, it is really hard to have projects pencil and to get financing attracted to the area. I know people are not keen on students. I know people are not keen on density. We're going to have to do that. If we don't want to do that, then we need to start talking about overrides, multiple overrides. And so my question is, as I laid forward, we need to be thinking long-term, short-term stuff to solve our current gap in the budget. I think is just going to continue to fall short. And I'm worried about cuts that are going to upset everyone, myself as someone who wants to put kids into the school system eventually. And I know older people who rely on ambulatory services or business owners who have fires that put their whole life's work into jeopardy. So that's my question. And thank you for your answer, Randy.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Dylan, just, you brought up the sewer connections. So the project is still underway between Hadley and Amherst. To your point, it's a long road, but it is still in motion. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there is a joint effort between Hadley and Amherst. Amherst has a sewer treatment plant that was built originally as a regional. That was the intent. It's located in Hadley, even though it's run by Amherst over on the university campus land. Hadley does not currently tap into that in any way. So there is a joint project whereby we would be able to take the pump station that currently supports generally the mall area and reverse the flow and send it to that plant. The reason that's important is that the alternative for Hadley is that we would need to build out our own sewer treatment plant at millions and millions of dollars. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that the land that we have even supports, that we could even bring that to fruition if we had the money, because we're geographically locked down there. So again, this is just something that's underway. It's quite frankly a baby step, but it would in fact allow us to enhance development in that particular area if we're able to accomplish that.
Sure.
So a little bit towards your question and then the emailed question as well, right? Our Route 9 corridor is what keeps us alive, and at the same time, which in some ways costs us a lot of money, right? We have a lot of ambulance, police, fire calls that are, attributed to everybody commuting to and from UMass, everybody that's shopping, everybody that's just whatever visiting. Without that though, if you look at some of the tax rates in the surrounding, we'll call them just strictly farming communities, and you look at what their tax rates are, right? If you look at their tax rates in these other communities, they're much higher. Their valuations may be different as well. But what we have to find a balance between, the person that emailed in, they said, look at the impact to some of these, the growth projects and things along those lines, right? We should look at the impact of those, but we either have to grow our way out of this, or like you said, increase revenues in some way, or we have to raise taxes. The idea that we can have $1 million increase in insurance premiums and then just say, all right, we're just going to lay off a bunch of people, problem solved. That solves the problem for a year, but there's going to be another increase on top of that the following year. It's going to keep happening over and over again. So we have to find ways to increase our revenues, grow intelligently in ways that have the least impact on town resources. There's some people argue that housing is the best option. Some houses come with students that cost money in the schools. So some people argue that businesses are the best revenue generator. But at the same time, you look at the number of fire, police, and other calls that are attributed to the business. So there's pluses and minuses to everything. As you mentioned, it's all long-term, relatively long-term solutions. So I think the planning board is talking about getting rid of the big box restriction, which I think is a step in the right direction. And then developments like the 55 and older there, the 55 and older that's down on North Maple Street over there. Those are projects that have relatively little impact on the kids in our schools. Yes, they may have more of an impact on ambulance or fire, but you got to look at the pros and cons, and it's a way to generate revenue with relatively little impact on our overall services. But it all takes time.
Hi, Evan Jacobs, moved here about a year ago, so I'm pretty new to all this, and I was talking to, I think you were talking, more to come there, but this is my first time doing one of these, so sorry if I'm nervous.
Make believe you like that microphone. Get a little closer.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So to echo what Dylan said, it's your name, yeah. I definitely agree with kind of like the growth strategy and kind of figuring out how to create a productive flywheel that will essentially propel itself. I do agree that, people go where the jobs are. So if we can attract more businesses here, either through deregulation or potentially zoning changes, that sort of thing, I think that would be profoundly helpful, although that is more of a longer term strategy, obviously, but it's something that is worth looking into. I don't know. I was also on the housing side, I was thinking about, I don't know if any of you have been out to like the Natick Mall, but one thing they did over there is they allowed residences to be built above the mall. And that actually was very successful for them. And it brought in a whole bunch of tax revenue, and they're all fairly expensive. It wouldn't be quite the same here just because the mall, is kind of mixed at the moment, but, we can work on getting that back up to being a fun place to spend a lot of time in over time. But, my bigger question, I guess, is I would love to understand from the town's perspective what levers we actually have. Because there's property tax, of course, but there probably are other ways to raise money too. Maybe ones that we haven't pulled yet. So I'm just kind of curious what's available, So I'm not super familiar with like town politics versus city, but I know that for cities, they have the option of potentially levying like a consumption tax. That could be like an addendum to the sales tax that could help bring in more revenue. What kind of stuff can we do? Like what is available?
Jennifer, can you, or options? Sure.
So one of the things that has tremendously benefited the town in the past are the local option taxes. So a number of years ago, when the state legislature allowed for that to happen so that each municipality could decide whether or not they wanted to levy that tax or not, right? So specifically, there are three that come to my mind over the past, decade or so. There's a hotel tax, a meals tax, and then the cannabis tax once cannabis outfits came into town. So quite frankly, in the absence of those local option taxes, this conversation would have been had quite a while ago. So it really, those were brand new monies coming in. And because of the location that we're in, obviously the hotels in particular are extremely lucrative. And I mean, they're full all the time. So that's been, a boon for the town to have that. One of the things that the legislature is working on right now, but it's not prime time yet, is the opportunity for us to increase those particular taxes. So we could actually raise them like another 0.75% or percent or whatever. That law is not in place right now. So I think there's some mixed results on Beacon Hill with that, but we're hoping that that will go through because that will immediately have a benefit for us should we choose to raise to the full extent, which I trust we would want to. So that's one thing, to your point. There are other development like tax credit incentives and things that the town could utilize like other municipalities. We aren't getting past go just on the concept of development. But there are tools in place that would allow us to attract development if we wanted to, but that isn't anything that we've taken up at this point.
Just so everyone's aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for meals tax, rooms tax, and cannabis tax, we are at the max for what the state allows us to charge for a local option. So we haven't left anything on the table there. We did at town meeting put in place the provisions for when the state eventually does pass the local option, we can take advantage of that. So we've already done our part town meeting wise, but it could be years before it gets out of the state legislature. And other than that, as far as charging fees and whatnot, we have looked at a lot of our permit fees over the years, last couple of years, 5 years or so. We've raised a lot of the one-time fees for building permits and, all kinds of stuff throughout the town. It's been helpful, but unfortunately, we don't generate enough building permits to, raise $1.5 million extra dollars a year. So we're trying, but it's not enough to solve the problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to say anything about anything?
I'll just mention that we did start a committee with the fiber optics, so that is something we're looking into. We've already done an interview of a company, but it is a process and it's a long process, but we've already started that option of looking into that. It will give both residents and businesses options, and it will bring income into the town. So it is something we're starting. Yeah, increase values.
Hello, everybody. Irene Costello. So looks like the big culprit in this is the insurance. And I'm curious what has been done to alleviate that, especially where we're expecting the rates to continue to rise. I think you said, at the same rate next year. And wondering if I'd like somebody to explain what happened and what the situation is with that trust that the towns was using. And also if there's ever any consideration or anybody looking at the idea of reinsurance as a way to offset the risks and lessen the expense of the health insurance.
What's that?
Well, want me to start it and you can fill in the blanks or?
Yeah, I can try.
And let me, I can jump in a tiny bit too, if you need me to, just because I am on the committee that's looking into that. I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I said you want to go for it?
Yeah, I'm gonna just turn off my camera because, satellite internet. I don't have fiber optics or cable. Hang on one second.
There you go, Amy. All set.
Yeah, I know, right? So one of the big contributors, besides, there being a lot of outstanding claims happening, is the GLP-1 drugs. That is something that has cost a lot of money. And there are a lot of people using it. So that has definitely increased the cost. We are looking at different options, but the reality is that, you know, this kind of jumped up now, but we're not actually sure it's going to continue to rise because there is legislation in place at the moment to deny GLP-1 drugs for weight loss. So those, it would no longer be covered by insurance for anything other than its original intended use. But yeah, health insurance, the other options you're looking at so far, you know, it's not, it doesn't seem like it's going to be much better anywhere else we go. So.
Yeah, and just taking a step back, so I'm not sure everybody understands. You know, you heard the word trust, right? So the particular health insurance trust that we're currently a part of is the one that's caught most of the attention around here. The alternative to that, and it's the one that the state employees utilize in several other districts as well, is the group insurance trust. So, you know, commonly known as the GIC. So I was just at the Mass Municipal Conference last weekend. This was the number one conversation at the conference. Everybody that you passed in the hallway, whether they were part of the Hampshire Group Insurance Trust or whether they were part of the statewide Group Insurance Trust, were wringing their hands and pulling their hair. You know, as Amy pointed out, one of the ways that the GIC is proposing to stave off future cost increases is to eliminate benefit. Okay, so I guess if you're diabetic, maybe you get to keep the GLP-1. But if you're a high risk and you're trying to control your weight, you may not be able to keep it. So it's not like that's a great solution necessarily that people are embracing. And I think so that is very different. And Irene, you're asking about, you know, reinsurance. Again, that's something that people are talking about as a backstop, but, you know, and that's where, Mike, I don't know if you have any new information about that. But point being, this is very different from, you know, most of us, you know, in private industry, we sign up with our employer sponsored plan. It's Blue Cross Blue Shield, Health New England, whatever. But you're in a pretty massive pool. With these public programs, they're different because the pool is far more limited than what most of us are used to.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could add to that, both of those statements are pretty accurate, are completely accurate. What I can tell you is that over the course of the last year or so, we have been looking at other options, both the GIC, the GIC, potentially Maya, as well as even possibly private ways to handle things. The worst possible way to handle things is to pay for our own claims out of pocket, but that is also an option should you not be able to continue to afford the insurance. Unfortunately, what we've been finding is that the costs of these other plans are very similar. Everybody else's insurances are going up as well. And what we're finding is even towns around us, like Amherst as an example, who I believe is a member of Maya, was able to save themselves like 1 percentage point based upon what our increases were. We're still looking for other ways to remedy the situation. One of which is that first slide. The less employees that you have on health insurance, the less your costs are. Granted, we certainly don't want to say, hey, let's lay off half the town so we can save on health insurance, because then you just work your way into another problem. However, we're looking at potentially incentivizing folks to not take the health insurance and perhaps get on a spouse's or partner's plan, something like that. What Amy Parsons said in the beginning is accurate when it comes to, we don't know what the future holds as far as whether or not the GLP-1s will be completely denied unless you have a medical reason to obtain it. But one thing that we have been made aware of is that the Hampshire County Trust specifically is about to have another meeting coming up where they will take another vote and decide whether or not they can make some plan changes, which will possibly save some money. But we expect what the numbers that they gave us right now, we expect at minimum a 16% more increase beginning on July 1. And that's if they can implement plan changes. And some of those plan changes are likely very high deductibles and are going to end up with people, you know, being costed out of being able to have insurance. If they can't make the plan changes, they're telling us to prepare for at least 20%. As David said a few minutes ago, I think our health insurance increase is more than $1 million since they started increasing us.
Yes,
Um,
yes, over the past, what,
and
3 years, do you have, it's a 1.4?
I'm so sorry, what?
1.4 million, I think, is a 1.5.
since the increases started,
Increase
Yeah,
since.
So
it
sorry,
started
guys.
going up.
I'm sorry, everyone texting me saying that Susan has her hand raised.
Yep.
Got it.
sorry, I'll stop talking, Susan. Just really quickly, the increases, like I said, as David mentioned, are over $1 million already, and the very basic math that Linda and I are having budget meetings right now on the 20% increase is another $650,000.
I just want to add to what he just said. I do insurance billing, my full-time job. The GLP-1s are being denied now by Blue Cross, Cigna, Health New England. So most insurances are probably going to follow. They won't pay for them at all unless you're diabetic.
Okay, I've unmuted Susan Black, so we can have her hand raised.
Okay, Sue, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, the GLP ones have not been available to anybody unless they are diabetic since October 1st of this year. And what got us into this situation was the cost of the GLP ones. Joe Shea spoke to our Collector Treasurers Association back in November and said what got them into this situation was $600,000 a month charges in this. And as far as reinsurance, the Hampshire Insurance Group Trust, they buy reinsurance, and essentially Blue Cross and Blue Shield is their front company. So we do utilize, or they do utilize, reinsurance in this instance. You know, the hope is that when you're looking at a $600,000 hit a month,
Can you
if,
speak into your microphone, Susan? You're cutting
Oh.
in. and-
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
It's okay.
But so, you know, the hope is once you don't take the $600,000 a month hit for GLP-1, that you can build back up your reserves and do business as well, somewhat usual. I'm sure that there will be plan changes that they'd like to introduce that would reduce our increases. I did have a conversation with Lauren today and got the 16% and 20% figures as Mike did. But, you know, I think what we need to look at going forward is what those 16 to 20% increases look like from us in a municipality to the
Yeah,
regular
yeah.
marketplace. I'm sorry?
You have to lean into your microphone. You keep
I'm
going.
sorry. So my point is, I think we need to look into what the 16 to 20% increase looks like in our municipal side compared to what it looks like. I think it compares favorably to what's happening in the regular insurance marketplace. We've just been spoiled for a number of years.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I believe that these are considered impacts to union employees.
Correct.
So it's not quite as easy as just saying, okay, you know, all right, instead of picking up, you know, whatever percentage will increase that, because we're now dealing with unions across the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. If you think it's hard to put in sewer lines in a timely manner, it's also hard to negotiate impact on union contracts.
So that's actually step two. Step one is the insurance trust has 70 some odd members who are all gonna, want to do different things and may not want to change the plans and how they look. So they have to get through that step and make their determination as to what the plan changes may be. And then I don't know if you've been watching select board meetings or not, over the course of the last couple of months, we have asked the select board to form 2 small committees. And it goes to what Molly was just saying, that we have essentially the president of each union in town or a bargaining member of each union in town. They have to form groups to then bargain with the town to accept these changes. And it adds a whole nother layer of things. And again, you have to think about the folks, because the town has, as Susan was saying, the town has one payment that we have to come up with, as we were just talking, the 650,000 that we're looking at potentially for July 1 on top of what we're paying. But the employees have the other portion of that payment. And so that's where their kind of right to bargain comes in. And we have to, by labor law, jump over that hurdle as well. So, and unfortunately, those are the things that delay any chance to just jump to a different health insurance provider, to jump to the GIC or jump to Maya. You can't do those things on a whim anymore. So those are things that, everything is in place, as David was mentioning earlier. Everything is ready to go. We just, like Susan was saying, we need to know the numbers, and we do have to recognize that she made a great point. We may have been doing so much better for so long, and now we're just taking a larger hit. I don't know the answer to that question, but what I do know is that nothing when everything started, and we saw these massive increases, the first thing that we did was start looking. And there was no number out there that said, move now, jump out of this trust and move somewhere else, because the savings just wasn't there.
On the pharmacy benefit side, is there, so I'm just thinking about, as a consumer, you're thinking a health plan, there's different. Health insurance, generally speaking, there are different choices that have different benefits depending on what you need. So I was wondering, from the point of view of, GLP-1s are expensive. That's been stated as a problem. Is there an option where it can be more of an opt-in system where people are not getting that by default, but if they really need it, they can potentially opt into it, and that would, by default save some amount of money to the town and, basically just reduce the exposure, so there doesn't need to be like a unilateral decision?
So the GLP-1 has to be authorized now by the insurance from your PCP. So if you want to take the GLP-1s, you have to, it's called medical necessity. You have to prove that your BMI is over 40 and you're diabetic. If you don't have that in writing, they will not give it to you now.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm not asking about that. I'm more saying from like what you're paying for that's in your plan perspective.
The only thing that I do know, and we can get you a better answer for it, but one thing I do know is that one of the things that we learned through investigating other providers like the GIC is that they offer a ton of different plans. And you can pick and choose, and the cost does go up and does go down, and reflectively it would go up and down for what it would cost the town based upon the 65% that the town pays for each employee. So I think the general answer is yes, but it would also completely depend on the plan that the employee selects. The GIC, from what I understand, has vastly more options than any of the other providers that are out there. There are, a good handful. But yeah, like I said, I think the general answer is yes, that it could fluctuate up and down and could save some money. But again, I don't know the inner workings of how how our municipality would sit down with an employee and encourage them to select a cheaper plan. I think it would be completely up to them.
How does it work today? Is everyone on the same plan?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think people can pick and choose based upon a few different plans that are offered out there,
Yeah.
single family plans, things like that. Vision, dentals, they can, tack on things.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's one plan.
But it's one provider, I
One
believe. I think it's
provider,
just
right.
Blue Cross.
Cross Blue Shield.
One provider and family single or plus one option, so you're free to the provider.
Yeah. And that was a change a few years ago. We did eliminate the higher plan. I'd say maybe it was about 5 years ago. So that saved some money and we didn't really have any trouble implementing that.
Could there potentially be some sort of a sliding scale of what the town pays for if you decide to take on a more comprehensive plan? Maybe the town is paying a somewhat smaller portion of it just to kind of offset some of that cost.
If the union agrees to it.
Yeah. Almost all of our staff at this point in time across town is in one form of a union, other besides department heads. So it would be bargaining with all of them.
How does the union respond to the jobs potentially going away if if we're not able to meet our cost obligations?
We may find out.
I think it's a real conversation to have.
It's a
Yeah.
very real conversation, and I think it actually goes beyond health insurance.
Yeah, it definitely is in the negotiation process. That'll be put on if we get to that point, that'll be put on the table. Are you willing to take a lesser insurance or lose X amount of employees? So it's just gonna be a game that we have to play and hopefully it works out in everybody's favor.
And it doesn't help that we have, shouldn't say it that way, but what makes it a little bit more difficult is that we have six unions on the town side, the municipal side, and I believe Danny, the superintendent, has 3. So, 2. Yeah. So we would have to do it with eight different units.
Someone's gonna have questions.
If you join the meeting after the beginning of the meeting and you're on Zoom and you would like to ask a question, please remember you need to raise your hand to indicate that you would like to speak.
For those of you who are online, we also have an option here for folks if they want to write something down and put it in the box. That option obviously is not available to you folks online, but if you would like to ask a question for the next session and you would like it to remain anonymous, please feel free to send us an email. We'll make sure that your name isn't on it and we'll read it just like we did at the start of the meeting.
Ellen?
All right, so I don't know if this is going to lead me to a question, but just some observations for context. We're not the only town that's in this issue right now. If you've watched some of the news around us, Amherst is having budgeting issues. Pelham's talking about shutting down their school district. South Hadley's talking about $3, $6, $9 million overrides, sending their athletics teams to Chicopee. It's not just us. This is having worked with a lot of these people up here in a capacity on the finance committee. A lot of work goes into these budgets, a lot of time. Don't have a lot of waste. I guess a question that I have for Linda maybe is, with all these towns facing these issues, has the state indicated any additional programming or funding or benefits on the cherry sheet? Anything coming from the state or no?
Funny you should ask.
All right.
Tonight after Jennifer and Mike had already come over from town hall, I logged in and found our cherry sheets and it's not obvious when you
go because there's so many little calculations to go through, but I entered all the numbers from the most recent. I entered the numbers from our most recent cherry sheet, and we did have a $220,000 increase in state aid from what we already had in the revenue projections. So if we could stay there or go higher, that's a help to us because first thing, we have the first pass of the budget, and there's a lot to do because it does involve eliminating personnel. So they can't, we can't be out with it yet. We're just still working with it, and we have to work with select board very carefully about how to implement that. But our initial gap, is large, and I really don't want to get into it right now. But my first thought was, we just closed it by 220,000. It's still large, but we have to find things like that. So I'm very glad that the state came through with a little bit more net state aid for us, and we'll see what happens next. As far as other state support, they have been helpful in meeting and having various group presentations about the insurance issue because they realize that impacts greatly. And I know, Molly, you were at the MMA conference, and maybe you have some information, whatever they're able to offer.
Sure, yeah. So at the MMA conference, again, obviously it was the topic of conversation for 351 municipalities. So, the governor came out and made her remarks. We heard from, our Senators Warren and Markey. Bottom line is, again, their rounds of applause, they're increasing chapter 90, which is the road revenue, put it that way, by a certain percentage. The legislative delegation has been more successful in recent years in securing what they refer to as rural aid. We're rural, right? Meaning outside the 495 band, right? But there's no one thing that is going to come close to saving the day. All right. So yeah, it's great that we're seeing a little bit of benefit on the cherry sheet. Each municipality will see some differential benefit depending on, how things are measured. But the bottom line is the Commonwealth is in a very difficult position because of federal funding. So, they're, one begets the other. So I don't think we can expect to be bailed out by the state anytime soon. And the other comment I would make too is obviously the healthcare is the most obvious. It's the easiest to explain. I think everybody can get their head wrapped around that. But I would also call it the straw that broke the camel's back. And what I mean by that is this isn't a conversation that we just started having now. We have been this close year over year over year over year. And again, all of a sudden the hotel tax came in and we went, phew, then the cannabis money came in, phew, the university increased a little bit of the pilot money. Oh, that is something that they're really working hard on, is to get state aid to be more realistic when it comes to the payment in lieu of taxes on state-owned property. Who knows when that will come through. But even if we resolve the healthcare issue, we're still looking at what I would refer to as a structural deficit. So I just want to make that point, and I think you guys are agreeing with me, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The only other point I would make is it's great that the state's coming through in $220,000 is a lot of money. That's real money. But the scale of the problem is 7 digits, and it's every year. And I just want to emphasize that this is a really large problem that we need a really big solution to. This isn't going to be opening up 1 or 2 more shops on Route 9. This is a really big problem to resolve.
Again. So I just wanted to address a couple things with the changes that we've made, right, since the special town meeting. Whether you were for the override or against the override, the vote results were what we had to work with. And, one of the things that I think all of us up here have gotten is, well, why was this department targeted, or why was this department targeted, or, the town's just playing games to get back at the side that voted against the override, things along those lines. and correct me if I'm wrong, but when we have these conversations up here, we don't, sit here and think of how can I, John Smith, how can we get back at him for voting no? We're working within our budget and within the numbers that we have, and we're making the best possible decisions to make things work for the town. So regardless of what side you're on, one side screams at us for making cuts, say to the fire department. The other side's screaming at us for, taking resident sand mix away to save a few $1,000s a year. So we can't win either way. We're just trying to do the best we can with what we are given by the taxpayers and the residents in town. And, if the next town meeting decides that, okay, we're willing to spend a little bit more money, great. But what we are fighting with is many of our departments in town are down to one, maybe two people at most. There's a lot that have a single employee running things. And don't get me wrong, in any form of government, there's waste and there's things that can be done better and more efficient. But the question is, what's important to taxpayers, what's important to the residents? We could go back to having one police officer in town and a fire chief and call it good. Would that work for Hadley? Probably not. It would save a lot of money, but is that what the taxpayers want to see? So I just ask everybody to, ideas are great. We want to hear them. But just realize that when you say, oh, why don't you cut this department or why don't you do that? That may sound like the best possible idea to you or to your family, but you got to think about the other 5,800 people in town and how those changes make a difference. So that's all.
And I will add that, back when Proposition 2.5 was created, the inflation rate was about 2%. So every year we could stay ahead of it. But inflation hasn't been 2% for many years. So every year we get behinder and behinder. And the reason we're here is to try to figure out how to stop that. And it's not going to be easy. We all are aware of that. And some tough decisions are going to have to be made at some point, whether it's people have to pay more taxes or people have to get laid off, whatever it may be. But we need to make the decision that's best for the town. It's good to see we have two participants this evening.
A lot to say, apparently.
That's all right.
Yeah, so I have a two-parter, I guess. So there's two issues, right? There's one short-term issue. There's money that has to go out in a somewhat compressed time frame. And then there's like the long-term issue, which is the structural issue. So for the short-term issue, one question I had is, if you guys have talked about this before, sorry. But what do we have on the balance sheet that we're not like using for like town properties, stuff like that? Are there any opportunities there to consolidate? Kind of curious about that. Second question was just to kind of go deeper into what we were talking about towards the beginning of the session. What are we doing to what businesses do we want to attract? That's one question, because some are better than others. Everyone loves to say casinos for money, but no one wants a casino in their backyard. So there's question about like what type of businesses, and then like what are we doing at the moment to make this a more attractive environment to attract that investment? So I'd love to just better understand those things.
You want it?
Talk about planning board.
I can answer the first question. I think the last couple of questions are more forward progress thinking that probably involve finance, select board, and even like planning board, zoning changes, things like that. What I will tell you is that Linda and I are hip deep in budget meetings right now. We've started these much sooner than we normally would. They are not going well, as you can imagine, but one of the main things that we are asking people and what we're trying to do is talking about what we can do to consolidate things. How do we consolidate staff? How do we consolidate possibly equipment? When I took over as the chief of police, the first thing that the fire chief and I did was, we're in the same building. Let's talk about how we can share things. How do we, share equipment, share resources, share services, things like that. And we made a lot of changes that were not only cost savings measures, but actually make things a lot more efficient. I'm certain that with the folks that have been in charge of this town in years past, that has probably been done before. I just am unaware of any of those changes. So one of the things that Linda and I are doing is we're making sure that we are asking every department head when we're going through these budget sessions, if there is any room to make that happen, for any more efficiencies, anything that we can do a little bit better. If we can make some of those changes, save some money, it equates to saving jobs possibly. So that's kind of our goal. And we're working through that right now. But again, I think the other things are more out, out into the future. And I love thoughts. I think a lot of these folks that are at this table have been thinking of those things and are certainly, looking towards them. And it really, I'd love to see, some collaboration with planning, zoning, select board, finance to really kind of look at those things and try to make some changes to attract some of those business. I would imagine that, with the fact that we have potentially more, layoffs on the horizon, and can't bring in more revenue, there's probably a lot of employees in this town that really wouldn't mind seeing a casino get planted in this town.
To answer your second question a little bit, the business world has changed over the past 10, 15 years, whatever. This town has the lowest tax rate around. So that's going to automatically attract businesses. We have 30 to 40,000 vehicles that go down Route 9 every day. That's going to be a huge attractor. We've got 5 colleges around us. We are, in my opinion, I've been in business in this town for 50 years. This is a very dynamic little area. When the economy goes south in the rest of the country, it goes slightly south here. Things stay relatively the same, fortunately for us or unfortunately for us, however you want to look at it, in terms of, yeah, this is an attractive area and it does increase the need for services. But to David's earlier point, I think that without the businesses, we'd be in a world of hurt. Our tax rate would be double what it is. And granted, our assessments would be down. But if you look at other towns around us, yeah, they've got a higher tax rate. They've got a lower assessment. They're paying the same taxes we are for lesser properties, probably. So is there something we can do to entice businesses to come here? I think the ones that want to be here are here, and we don't have a lot of open space on Route 9. I think there's one empty lot that I'm aware of that's for sale, and it's not a great one. Can we redevelop what we've got? Certainly. But you kind of have to wait till what's there has run its course and is ready to leave, and then we can get something new in. So I think that's a hard situation, but I agree with Mike that we do need to plan for it and hope that in the future businesses or housing or whatever it is that wants to come to Route 9 will come.
Can I?
You can say whatever you'd like, miss.
I'm really glad you asked that, because we don't currently have a great mechanism in town to further that conversation. In other municipalities, there may be, we have a housing and economic development committee, and it was formed really just to provide a dialogue, a bridge between select board and planning board. But, we don't have a professional planner or anything like that. And we rely on the Pioneer Valley the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission to provide those services. But I can tell you that there are developers who contact us and they're interested in maybe whether it's, as Randy said, kind of repurposing an existing property or wondering about a development that might go in somewhere that they saw in some other municipality with different zoning or whatever, one of the very first questions they ask is the town going to be behind it? And right now, I mean, I would say that Hadley's sending a message that the town is not behind development. It's not, I mean, I think and if it was a close vote, I think it would have been one matter, but it was, somewhat of an overwhelming vote against the override. And I mean, that plays out in the world. I mean, the first thing people do is they're going to Google your town and they're going to see that you've had layoffs. They're going to see that, budget crisis looms or whatever the headlines might be. And the other side of that challenge is, we kind of live in I'll call it two Hadleys. I'm sure there are many gradations in between, but, there are folks in town who are very high income earners. They're well above the median. They have, they may or may not have expensive homes, property values, whatever. That's all recorded at the state. So the state has the data about our town. And then they also see, the other Hadley where people they may be single income elders struggling to stay in their homes and pay their property taxes, even at the level that we're at now. The problem is when we go after money to try to get grants to say, hey, we could use some consulting, we can use this, we can use that. We just lost a $3 million infrastructure grant because they basically came back and said, you're too wealthy on paper, right? I mean, it's hard to say to somebody who's struggling to pay their property taxes, sorry, we're too wealthy. But there are many other people in town and that have the wherewithal to pay it. So it's this difficult dichotomy that we have to deal with. And I know people don't like to hear that. I think, we've been told, oh, we're making that up. But I mean, we literally are just coming off of the loss of a grant. And it was very explicit that was the issue and why Hadley didn't get the grant compared to another municipality. So wish I had a great answer, but I'm glad you asked that question.
Sure.
So you asked about assets that we could sell off. We sold North Hadley Village Hall several years back, so now it's on the tax rolls versus just sitting there. We have Russell School and the Goodwin as far as the only actual physical assets I can think of that are left, right? Buildings, yes. They don't really cost us a whole lot to hang on to, and there's been so much back and forth in a direction to go. When we talked to developers probably 4 or 5 years ago, it was, yeah, I can redevelop it for free if you give it to me. Other than that, I'm not willing to pay for it, or I'd pay, $100,000, something like that. So if you got rid of those assets like the Goodwin and the Russell School, you'd be talking about a one-time infusion of a little bit of money, but it puts us back the following year right back to where we are now with trying to have recurring revenue. Maybe if that was developed, it would be on the tax rolls and you get some tax revenue coming that way. I don't know, but there wasn't a whole lot of interest, and we were pretty split as a town as far as what we wanted to do with the building. So kind of a hot topic. The other thing I get from people around town a lot is, why do we have so many police cars, or why do we have so many dump trucks or whatever in town? We've done a lot over the years to get rid of junk. The DPW used to be just a giant junk pile down there. In the years past, we've auctioned off just about everything that's unusable down there. The equipment that's down there is generally, it serves a purpose. Same thing with the police cars. People go by on East Street and they say, oh, there's 20 police cars. How is it that we have 20 police officers on duty? No, but when you take into account police details and backup cars and things like that, and the details actually generate a little bit of money for the town. But those cars all serve a purpose. So I constantly get yelled at for, why do we have so many police cars? Sell them off. Okay, well, you get $8,000 for a 100,000-mile Ford Explorer one time, and then if that saves maybe a little bit of money here and there, but these are all small things, and those help. But again, it doesn't close $1.5 million budget gap, and that's one of the challenges we're having. So we want to hear those ideas, but unfortunately, a lot of the suggestions just don't quite get us there.
The reason why I asked was.
Microphone, please.
Take it back to the chair.
So I live more on like
Doing
the North Hadley side. And I saw there was like a police station up there and I wasn't sure if that was redundant at this point or, I was kind of curious about that.
It's a fire substation.
Sorry.
That's
Well, there was another one though, that's like closer to the Sunderland line.
I think
That's probably there.
Oh, okay.
and a Stockbridge.
Yeah.
I'd know if we had two.
I voted for the override for the record.
Mr. Benjamin. Hang on, Seth. Well,
A couple of things. There's a lot of talk about the expenses employees, and I know that we essentially cut a lot of positions out, but it wasn't really surgical. It was convenience. These were unfilled positions. Nothing was done, I don't believe by anybody really, to look at what the effects of those positions being eliminated are. Okay, we haven't felt that yet in this town. We did a little bit during the storm because I saw on the community page, people saying, why isn't my street, plowed yet? Okay, and hopefully it won't be things like, how come my house is on fire and nobody's shown yet? Because we're down to 2 fire department employees at a time. Those are the things that I think we really have to be concentrating on. I know that a lot of people didn't want to pay more taxes. Nobody does. I supported that override strongly, but I don't want to pay more taxes either. But we're in a town, we're a community. We have employees who are victim of this incredible increase in our healthcare, and they're the ones. It's almost like we're demonizing, it's our employees that they're costing us so much. There've been talk about increasing the percentage that they should pay in healthcare. They're already paying 65%. They're paying 35%, right? Most private companies pay more than that. Okay. We need to attract good people. And more importantly, we have people here now who will start looking for jobs elsewhere if we start cutting into what they can depend on for support from this town for the work that they do, for the contribution they make. You had a chart up there before that showed our school was what, 38% of our budget? I think if you go to any other town in Massachusetts, it's 50% or more. And yet, even with that, we attract how much money? I'm sorry, how much money do we take in school choice? 2 million, maybe?
Well, right now, too.
Okay. Into our schools.
It's on. How about? Okay. Annie's, does $1.3 million sound about right?
So $1.3 million, if you're looking at the school choice, the cherry sheet for today, I noticed what I think is an error in that actually. So I've already emailed the state to ask a question about that. It doesn't matter. The details they bore me, they bore everybody here to tears. But you are correct in the fiscal year for which we have data available for all Hampshire County towns. In Hadley, the school department is the lowest percentage of total operating costs at roughly 35% in fiscal year 24. And it is typically closer to 45% or higher. School choice, our school choice in is at a peak of 146. Our school choice out is at its lowest. You probably noticed that in the cherry sheet, Linda, that also on the estimate side, the school choice for FY27 shows a decrease, and charter tuition, because we're retaining kids, shows about $156,000 decrease in projected assessments for next year. So we are doing everything we can to attract as many students as we can, to retain every student that we can, and we're chasing grants. Over a significant amount of grant funding. The problem is, of course, everyone knows that grants are fluctuating and non-recurring sources of revenue. And so it's a fiscally unstable approach to use fluctuating and non-recurring sources of revenue for ongoing recurring costs. But we are doing the best that we can there. I mean, this year, I think we're over $1 million in competitive grants that we've tried to get or have successfully gotten.
Thank you. So I think we this is a revenue issue. It absolutely is. And I'm sorry that the reality is that this town's gonna have to look at an override whether we want to or not. Because we're not gonna cut our way out of this. What we're gonna end up with is having to lay off more people. And here's the thing, when you have two people in a department and one of them leaves for whatever reason, better job, better healthcare plans, or we just laid them off. How do you replace that? You know, we don't have large departments. We're not a large company when they do 15 or 20% layoffs. They still have people working. We don't have that. We have small departments. I mean, our biggest departments are school. And if we cut there, we're gonna lose that other revenue. And we won't have as good an education system. Okay, is that what we want for our towns, for your kids and your grandkids and so on and so forth? Okay, we can't cut our way out of a police department that defends us against crime and helps us with all the things that happen in the town. We're down to 2 people in a fire department at any time, basically, and a chief who has to be on call 24/7. We don't even have a deputy for him. I mean, this is serious. And you know, people who are angry because we bought this piece of equipment or that piece of equipment, they got to just stop it, because that's not going to solve our problem, is pointing to those mistakes. It's how are we going to get out of this now? And it's been thrust upon us because of inflation. And yes, healthcare costs have gone through the roof. I was an employer for 45 years. I know all about it. I had to pay my own insurance plus everybody else's. But we have a serious problem here, and we have to go back and look at the revenue. There are things that we'll be able to do for the future. You know, I worked, when Lowe's came into town, we changed our zoning to let them go further back from Route 9. Maybe we need to look at that. But that's going to mean a change in the way the town looks, even more than it is now. But that may be something we can do, but that's 10 years from now to really have an impact. Everything that we can do to make changes is going to take 3, 4, 5, 10 years. The only thing that we can do right away is increase the taxes to fill this gap, to try and cut it. With all the other cuts, reduce the amount of an override, yes. But that's where we're going to be. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. And I'm sorry for calling you mister. Seth.
I'd like to be the only person here tonight who volunteers to pay more taxes. But my question is, are we talking to our state legislators and telling them, asking them, begging them to thank the governor for the increase in whatever it was, but it's not enough?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and one thing I would just say to that is, I think we benefit tremendously from an active legislative delegation. Joe Comerford in particular has been just an incredible friend to the town. Omar's relatively new as our rep, but prior to him, Dan Carey certainly did a lot to bring funding and raise awareness of issues on Beacon Hill on our behalf. So, I mean, I think, Mike, you'd agree with that. You probably have more contact with them than.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We just had a meeting today with Senator Markey's office and Senator Comerford's office to talk about funding for our levy issue. And I'm sure most people are aware that that's a massive problem. We're talking, you know, $2 million for emergency repairs just to make things safe for where we are right now. And then potentially up to 80 million more to enhance the levy to protect the town, you know, all the way around. So we're engaging them anywhere and everywhere that we can for any types of funding.
I wanted to add some positivity a little bit, because I feel like we could use it.
Yay.
So I mentioned I moved here about a year ago. I lived in East Hampton before, and I grew up more in Central Mass in the Milford area. And, you know, one thing I always tell people since I moved here is that honestly, this area feels more like home to me than Central Mass ever did. And one thing I feel like we could do more as a town, as a group, is honestly just a little bit of a vibe shift. We just like talking about the great things about this area. I mean, this is one of the most beautiful parts of Massachusetts. I feel like a lot of people don't even know we exist, honestly. You know, if you live on the eastern part of the state, you might know about Amherst. You certainly don't know about Hadley. I think there's a lot more that we could do, and we can unleash our creativity there on like kind of the marketing side of things, just to kind of get the word out that we exist. We're a great place to move to. We have these low taxes. We, ideally we'll have a very business friendly environment to attract further investment. But I think like there's more that we can do on that aspect to help that flywheel I was talking about, to get people interested in being here, contributing. And I don't know, like one idea I just thought of is like a photo contest, you know, once it warms up a little bit. Obviously the winter is not the best time of the world to be here, best time of the year to be here. But, just like there's so much natural beauty. We have all these amazing nature preserves. We have a lot going for us. I think we need to leverage it more and really just kind of like inspire people to come and invest their lives here.
Thank
Evan, they have a terrible town administrator right now. I'm not sure what you do for a living. It's gonna be a job opening pretty soon.
He's meeting with me on Friday. Don't worry, he's coming for you.
My question is around voting. Every time I hear the town voted for no override, I say the people who showed up, more of them voted one way than another. I'm not up here to say which way to go, but it looks like the only way a person can register their vote is they have to show up for an override. They have to show up at Hopkins Academy, whose capacity is nowhere near the number of people who could vote. So there's no way that they could. And then they also have to go in a ballot. And I don't think, were there early vote ballots for that?
Yes.
That's great. So now I'm really talking about, is the way the town is set up that it must be like that, where you have to actually show up. So I couldn't make it to that town meeting because I had a business meeting. Fortunately, we told our daughter, you better go. But my husband and I couldn't. So that's 2 votes that you lost for. I mean, again, I accept how it turned out. But is there maybe what we need to do is have some people with marketing skills really educate people the importance of participating. This is where it matters. I mean, I'm not saying that that's me. I know somebody who's retired in marketing. And if the town had, a 80% turnout and this was the vote, then okay. But I'm not sure that this is really the town's, the voters,
Right.
I'm sorry, the residents' decision.
Your point is well taken.
So I just wanted to say something. My name is Joanne, by the way.
So back in,
One other thing. I actually have a list of other ideas, but there's not time. I'm going to, can more ideas be emailed to someone?
Sure.
Okay. So the other piece I wanted to know is if someone can see, maybe you would have to figure this out. The number of people who voted okay for an override. I'm one who did, and I am happy to pay more taxes. Happy, because they pay for services. I would voluntarily add a tip to my taxes if that's an option. Would all the people who voted yes be willing to say how much more they would pay and make a commitment, and now that's income? I mean, I'm just trying to think about the revenue part. I'm willing to pay more taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You said you would. There might be more.
Will you each kick in $1 million?
I'm trying to build my business to have more extra profit. I'm working on it. Okay, those are a couple of.
But to answer your question about our form of government, that state mandates we have to have town meeting because of the size of the community. So town meeting is the only way we can do anything when it comes to voting for something. And I wish we could get more people. And I don't believe that the fact that the capacity at Hopkins is the limiting factor. If we got enough people, we would have it in the gymnasium. We would then have it in the cafeteria and any other room we needed to. We'd have to figure it out. It would be a logistical nightmare, but we could do it. Yes. And back when towns in Massachusetts were created and they had town meeting, it was mandatory that you showed up. And if you weren't there, somebody would come to your house and drag you to the town meeting. So I don't think we could reinstitute that, but it would be a good idea because I agree, we do not get a good ratio of people that vote, that can vote in this town to come. And it's not right. Dylan, would you like to say something?
I'll just say that, Joanne, presumably I just learned that you have a business. You are paying more taxes. Thank you for having your business in Hadley. You probably have payroll tax, probably pay real estate tax. So you're probably doing extra, which is great. Okay, well, payroll tax at least. Yeah, sales tax maybe. I was just going to ask a question about how are we going to, there's 24 people in this room right now. Town meeting might have 150, maybe 200, 250, 300 if we talk about another override this year. How do we communicate to the people that are not here at that, but will be at the override or aren't going to be at the town meeting? All of the things that are getting cut. So Linda and Mike are going to do a great job at trying to balance this. Finance is going to figure out how to balance this. If there's an override, so be it. But in the balancing process, there's a cost. We're going to lose people in services. So how are we going to do a good job at displaying some of those things that we lose? Because I feel like people that are not plugged into this town don't understand that Chief Mason is our chief and our town administrator. I don't even know what Jennifer's title is because she's everywhere and does everything. Alex has done so much to broadcast this entire everything that we do in this town above and beyond anything I could imagine. And then Dr. McKenzie is driving tons of revenue into this town with school choice. Like we have a lot of people busting butts to do a lot of great stuff for this town. They're not getting recognized. We're going to squeeze them and their staffs further. And I just don't know how do we communicate how much that you guys do better because it should be known.
Go.
So I think communication is one of the toughest problems, the biggest problems we have because, we get the same, I'll say maybe 50 people that are actually fairly involved in town politics and the decisions that are being made. We probably get the same 100 to 150 that show up for every town meeting. You may get another 100 or 150 on top of that for a hot topic like the senior center or the library or an override vote. You get an extra 150 people that show up. But we have 2,000 registered voters, something like that. Okay, so maybe 3,000 registered voters. So you're getting a very small percentage, and it still shocks me after 6 years doing this, how many people come up to me, and I know for a fact they weren't at town meeting. I know for a fact they weren't at any of the forums. They don't try to educate themselves on what's happening in town, but then scream at me and say, why is this being done? Why haven't you guys done this? And I say, well, we have done that. And the most recent question I've gotten is, why wasn't anybody laid off in town? I said, well, people were laid off. We laid off a couple firefighters. We didn't fill a whole bunch of positions. We've made these cuts here and there. Well, how am I supposed to know that? So it's the biggest problem. And I think the rest of these boards would agree, trying to get the information out to people. You can stick it on Facebook. You can put out press releases. You can put it in the newspaper, and you're still going to have maybe 25% of the population that cares and the rest of the people just want to complain. And that's their right to complain, but I wish that we could flip those numbers somehow and get people a little bit more involved. You know, I'm open to hearing other ideas, but we've tried everything we can. And that's one of the reasons for these sessions is to try to. Last time we got yelled at for preaching at people and doing a slide presentation, and okay, that's good criticism. I get it. So we tried to open this up to more of a back and forth and question and answer. And again, the same people show up. So thank you for showing up. But I wish more people would show up.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. All right, hang on one second. We've got somebody on Zoom, so go ahead, Sue.
Hold on, missed it. There you go. So this is exactly what I hear in my office all the time. When did this pass? How did this pass? And I say, well, it was at town meeting. And people, I mean, I don't know how we can advertise things differently. That is more because we do it. But again, hopefully people understand we're in trouble here financially. And so hopefully people come out and pay attention to this. And I appreciate the folks that you have in your audience today and the folks who have spoken. That's wonderful. It's really hard. The morale in town hall and actually through town has really deteriorated because it's kind of like we don't feel like we have the town behind us. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thinking out of the box, the senior center is run by 104 volunteers or more, all of whom contribute many, many hours. More than 100 people come in and out of this building every single day. It's probably one of the most used buildings in the county. To be perfectly honest, why don't we have more volunteers in the town? Volunteers could do marketing, volunteers could do communication, volunteers could take the weight off the small number of people that the town can afford to pay. So I'm not sure how that would come about, but it works here. And once it's in place, you've got a lot of value added to the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
We had a few more people join in the last bit of time. So if you're on Zoom and you want to ask a question or make a comment, you have to raise your hand to unmute yourself.
Such anticipation. One of our two saviors.
What I will say on the volunteering side is one of the biggest gaps is just knowing what's needed. So I think if we made a list of things that would be helpful to the town and posted them somewhere, I think that would go a long way towards attracting that sort of help. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to start helping out hopefully soon. So yeah, all those gaps, I think it'd be great to have kind of a help wanted board or something that we can post somewhere, and it would go a long way, I think.
We do have the senior and veterans tax work off. It's veterans, right? Yep. Tax work off program. So if you are interested in volunteering, you can actually get some money off your property tax bills by doing it. So.
Good evening, Andrew Bass, 8 Crystal Lane in Hadley. I have to agree with what Mr. Benjamin said, that it seems like the budget and the town and the cuts have all been done, and that no matter what, we'll have to see an increased levy of some sort. Has anyone put in sincere effort into exploring the possibility of splitting the tax rate in town?
Who wants it?
I'll start and then we can, Yeah, and I think you know this, Sandra, that every year, the assessors bring a split versus single tax rate presentation to the select board. There are absolutely pros and cons to it. So the only time in my memory that we did a split tax rate was actually post COVID. And what happened at that point was that there was a shift in the valuations. And so for 1 year, the town actually increased the commercial tax rate. And then we did it with the firm commitment that we would flip it back the following year because we knew that there was some sort of an anomaly in the valuations. So we did go ahead and do that, and it seemed to work successfully. And I'll speak for myself. I don't think that there's a sentiment that we would never go with the split tax rate. It's just all of the information that has been put in front of us and other municipalities that we're familiar with. It's not necessarily a panacea. I mean, it can work from the standpoint that it alleviates pressure on the homeowners, the residential property tax owners. But the commercial rate by law does include agriculture. And quite frankly, I guess the way somebody put it to me at one point, we want to be careful not to punish the goose that's laying the golden egg, which is Route 9. I think that there's a strong sentiment on the part of some individuals that they think that Route 9 is actually at the root cause of a lot of our cost infrastructure. Statistically, it's actually not true. And again, that's something that the assessors bring that analysis to us every year. So, as a result of that, that's why we've landed where we've landed pretty consistently.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought up the split tax rate because there's a lot of people that I've talked to that do not understand that they think if we split the tax rate, then we can charge the businesses X and the residents is Y, and we can then increase our tax revenue. But that is not possible. We have this thing called the levy, which is X amount of dollars. We cannot exceed that in taxation. So the pot will remain the same, just how it gets paid is different. So I think that drives a lot of this split tax rate question is, we're going to get more, we'll get more money, but we can't. So just so that everybody's clear on that.
It's not necessarily something I would debate here, but isn't it completely lawful to increase the levy and then split the rate?
You could cut, so if we did an override, right, and the override.
Do an override and get a bigger pot and then split the rate and then impute that tax liability on the commercial entities.
Yeah, I mean, that could be done.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we talked about after this spring election, we would have a discussion about splitting the tax rate because we had one meeting. I think we had to decide in 10 minutes about the tax rate because when the assessors came in front of us, the rate had to be set that night. So we had talked about having, after the election's over with, having this discussion and having residents come in and do something like this and talk about the pros and the cons of it, versus just on the spur of a moment having to make a decision. So
Paul Benjamin again. Speaking on the split tax rate, it doesn't raise any more money. And the other thing is that the perception is that when you split the tax rate at Hadley, it's going to be the Walmarts, the Stop and Shops, all those big companies that are going to pay it. But if you go from the bridge and drive down Route 9 to the mall, you'll find that there are more individually owned businesses there with local owners who are running those properties who are going to get hit by this. So you're going to be taxing local residents thinking you're going to get Walmart or JCPenney or, Whole Foods. Okay, you're going to be taxing more individual people who live here and the farmers and the people who have houses that they rent out 100%. So those are commercial people. Some people are running some businesses off of Route 9 in their houses. There's little pockets of other zones on Route 47 that have businesses. They're all going to pay more. You're going to be hitting local residents. That's it. The only thing we could do, I think, on looking at the larger companies, and again, are we going to attract new businesses if we do this, is to look at some type of like bid protection area that created more money, was mandatory from a certain distance to a certain distance. But remember, even mixed into the mall are local people who own franchises of some of those new restaurants that have opened up that are paying the taxes here and providing jobs for local people. Again, this is about raising money, and we're not going to be able to push it off on one group or another. This is a town problem. If you really want to solve the problem in this town and the whole state, you have to go back to Proposition 2.5, have it indexed to whatever the CPI is every year, and that becomes the maximum you can raise it, so that all the towns can keep pace with inflation and cap it, because it's an antiquated rule. It's a great rule. It's saved our taxpayers a lot over what other states pay, but it's antiquated. It did not anticipate 4%, 5%, 6%, 7% years of inflation and more. And that's the problem. That's where our legislature ought to be, is getting a new referendum to take 2.5 and update it to index it. And then we'll be able to, some year, we might only have to go 1.5 up. And other years, 2.5, but it'll get changed every year. The state, just like a cherry sheet, will put out what's the allowed levy increase.
And Paul, you're reminding me of one other talking point from the assessors is that, and again, some of us have been around this area for a very long time, so we remember when the Mountain Farms Mall was actually built. And then the Hampshire Mall, the new mall, the Hampshire Mall came in. So we've lived through the Mountain Farms Mall being the dead mall, because it was basically put out of business by Hampshire Mall. And then now we all know the situation is quite reversed. And a concern that the assessors have, and this is proven with factual data, is that with the greater tax burden going to the commercial properties, again, you think Target, you think Lowe's, you think Home Depot, they're doing just fine. That Hampshire Mall is barely cash flowing at this point. It was already taken back and is owned by effectively the banks at this point. And the concern on the part of the assessors is that that's, when you have a different economic climate and commercial properties, large commercial properties, start filing for tax abatements, anything that we thought we gained in a split tax rate, we can lose pretty quickly. So, it's just more complicated than, just flipping it over.
That's good. Thank you.
All right.
And just a sort of a general question, which is, I think I heard that because the override failed, that the feeling is the town is not, that revenue may not be the answer. And it seems to me that the only way we get out of the problem we're in is we have to raise taxes. I get that. But we also have to raise revenue, new business. And the question I've got is, does the select board and the planning board and all the other people who talk to businesses, are they on that page? Is that where our government is, which is we need to attract more business. And that means we need to help with zoning. We need to help them get sewers done. We need to do whatever we need to do to attract business. And that's a mindset. And that may be a different mindset than where we've been, but we kind of sold our souls on Route 9. It's done. So let's get it done. Let's be pro-business. Let's do whatever we need to do. And why does it take 4 years? That's what I don't understand. Like I hear, it takes a long time to do that. Well, if we started it a year ago, it would take less time. And I'm frustrated when I hear that as an answer, because I don't know anything about it, because that's not what I do. But it just seems to me that we need the energy to say, we need to attract business. And when a business does come, and you said, someone came and, they said, well, gosh, there's this and that going on in Hadley. Do we ever sit down and figure out, why didn't this happen? Why did this business not build in Hadley and go someplace else? Or why did it not get done at all? And figure out, how do we get it done? That's my question.
Can I just add one thing really quick to Andrew's point? For those of you who, David had brought this up before, and Randy, I know, and Susan as well, I know everybody doesn't watch all of the select board meetings, like I don't want to be at any of them, but you know, I can't even imagine what it's like to watch. But there was one thing when Senator Comerford was here, and I think we had a bi-board or a tri-board meeting, something along those lines. One of the things that Wally said was that when you split a tax rate into commercial and residential, currently agriculture is included in the commercial side of things. Senator Comerford did mention, and I have no idea how far along this is or what, you know, where they are with it, but she did mention that there is work being done right now at the legislative level, even if it's just discussion of potentially breaking that commercial into a two-part, you know, separating out agriculture. I have no clue where it is, or you know, whether or not it's anything realistic, but I did just want to mention that because I thought it was, I was under the impression that this was, nobody had ever even discussed this in the past, and I was surprised to hear that. So I can look into that and try to get some more information, because I actually think that might change things. Sorry.
No. I'd say with the to your point, Paul, about 2.5 and indexing it, I think that's would have been a better decision back in the day. But here we are. And it kind of seems like to me that the state is giving us the solution, and that's 40R. It's an opportunity to take land that we have that is being underutilized and put it towards use that has a higher tax value per acre.
Dylan, most people don't know what 40R is. So.
Oh, okay. 40R is a state program that is kind of a carrot for all these communities that Maura Healy's office has said that we have a housing crisis. 40R is a program to try to entice new housing projects to be built in all 351 municipalities. And so you get two things if you do go with a 40R program. You get a lump sum of money depending on how much you upzone, how far do you go, and it's an exponential scale, not linear. So you are more serious about housing, you're going to get more money off the drop. And then presumably real estate developers come in and they develop that land for housing to supply that need for the community. And then the state gives you another slug of money for every unit that gets developed. And then you get the real estate tax dollar revenue. So it seems like that's the state carrot to the 2.5 and not being indexed to inflation that we should consider more. That's my bigger idea. My concern is it's going to take too long and we're going to go too short and it's not going to be meaningful in a way that we need it to be. But I'd say consider that if you're interested in raising revenue of 40R, and learning about that program is great. And then I'll leave everyone with a little bit a tip. Volunteering is great. I used to do it. I was on the finance committee for a while, and then started the Hadley Housing Economic Development Committee with Molly, was on the ad hoc with Claire before she just left. Volunteering doesn't work for me because I'm raising a small family right now, kid any day now. But if you Google AI YouTube generator, you can upload all these videos that Alex does right into the AI generator, get a full synopsis. And I've been able to watch every single one of these meetings with keywords and stuff. So if you want to be more involved, just Google AI translator for YouTube videos. Yeah, I haven't missed any of the meetings.
Okay.
Even though I can't be fun.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows, the beeping is a fire alarm fault. It's not a fire alarm going off, but it is going to go off for a bit until we figure out how to take care of it. That's what that beeping is.
Andrew.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Andrew Bass. This time I'll use a different address, 185 Russell Street. That's a commercial property. All right. So I'm willing to pay more taxes on my commercial property because Hadley is a great place to do business. It is the center of the universe here in the Pioneer Valley. People are not going to leave. The commercial tax rate is too cheap, and there's too many things to pay for in this town. There's firefighters we need police officers, we need all the essential services totally funded, we need equipment, but we need the commercial district to pay for that, not the residents. The residents are not the ones putting the burden on the town with the Route 9 activities, the sewer upgrades, the nonstop police and fire calls to Walmart and all the different businesses down in the Route 9 area, the corridor. I mean, how many times is the fire department going up to North Hadley for calls? You know, probably not very often. Its commercial tax rate is too cheap. And that's really all I had to say.
Thing I wanted to double click on, what was her name? Pat brought up a great idea. So I was thinking about like what makes an attractive town, like what draws people to places. And one big thing that is a consistent thing for all the towns that really have a lot of people that are interested is a walkable district. It's something that everyone loves. And I think for us, actually, our walkable district is the Hampshire Mall. And it's underdeveloped. And it's not maybe it's not thought of in that way, but I actually think that is kind of the beginning of that because it's sheltered. So you can go there in the winter. There's a lot of space to do things in there. You could potentially go vertical if we work with the planning board on that, potentially. But I just wanted to put that in people's heads that like it's kind of underutilized at the moment. And I think we could do a lot more with it.
And Pat, to your question about the business, I think that this town is very agreeable to conventional business. And anytime a business wants to come to town, there's never a problem. It's when we start getting into this creative aspect of it where, you know, we have businesses on the first floor and housing above it. That's where we need to direct our energies.
Do it.
Okay, you're it.
No, and just to speak to your frustration, you know, again, just describing what we have to work with. So the select board, we have a housing and economic development committee that was created a handful of years ago that I chair currently. Like I said, that was intended to be somewhat of a conduit to kind of make sure that the planning board and select board were talking to each other. So Bill Dwyer from the planning board sits on that committee as well. And then we have other representatives from the town. What we try to do is make sure that there's dialogue occurring so that, you know, we do know what development is underway. But because we don't have a town planner, nor quite frankly, now can we obviously afford one. It's very difficult because, you know, we brought up volunteers earlier. Planning boards volunteers, select boards volunteers. So we don't have anybody who's an actual full-time staff person who's charged with any of this. So you're at the mercy of boards that are turning over and hoping that somebody takes the flag with it. What I'd politely suggest is I don't think that the planning board maybe hears from the constituents enough. Sorry, don't tell Bill I said that. Hope he's not watching.
He's watching. He heard you.
But I think, you know, the planning board, because of this 40R initiative, they have a smart growth committee. And unfortunately, again, all volunteers, there's been significant turnover on the smart growth committee. So they've almost completely recomposed themselves. And they did do a couple of similar to this kind of listening sessions right here. But it's dated at this point. I attended, and I would tell you that overwhelmingly, the people who attended on the night that I came were very much in favor of additional housing along the Route 9 corridor, specifically apartments, condos, and mixed-use development. But, you know, like you're saying, it doesn't seem to really go anywhere, and they had to take a step back and then kind of restart again. And that's why we keep saying these things take time. And the more, the merrier. I mean, I think that, you know, the planning board, they have people coming in front of them, like Randy said, you know, whether, you know, the Palmers came with an over 55, you know, apartment, and the zoning was changed, you know, as a result of that to allow for it. So we've seen it happen. But often it has to be a specific project, you know, for the planning board to move on that quickly. Once you get into kind of little more amorphous zoning changes, they tread very carefully because they don't want to make the wrong decision. So I do think that they would benefit from hearing from people in town as to what they think about, you know, development along Route 9.
Well, they meet the first and third Tuesdays of every month. And they're on Zoom. And they have, at the beginning of every meeting, they have what I'll call a free-for-all. First come, first serve. And if you have anything to say, they're more than willing to listen.
Yeah. And putting the town of Hadley on TikTok.
We're on TikTok.
We're doing Facebook and we're working on our Instagram, but we're not on TikTok. I will defer to that gentleman.
Did you want to do a town dance, Ursula? Okay. Anybody else? You got? Alex is going to say something.
Yep.
Mike.
Little shameless plug here. Alex Marsh, Hadley Media Director, the guy who's usually behind the camera. We're actually going to be doing a monthly newsreel that we're going to preview some of the stuff that happened over the month that we covered, and we're gonna put in a little bite-sized newsreel. We talk about what happened in the month. Like this week, we're gonna be working on January, so that's something new we're doing. It could be posted on our YouTube, and then it could be, if Jennifer's open to it, we could email it.
Mailing anything to residents is a very large cost that we do not have budgeted for. The US Post Office, it does twice yearly increases now, January and July. We can't afford to mail to the houses. We send out your collections, your bills, your taxes, and then everything else is town business. But we can do Nixle alerts. We can email it out on town news alerts. And if people aren't signed up for that, I highly recommend that you sign up for the town news alerts. But
You're still not gonna get. You're not gonna reach people that aren't paying attention. You just mail them to everyone's tax. You have their. But it was the tax, so, I mean, we don't have an email address.
No.
So, okay, we could potentially do an insert into taxes. We have done that before with communicating certain things. That is definitely something we could look into doing. But really, it's the key is, and the best way to stay involved and to learn about the town and to be involved in the town is to sign up for those town news alerts, and check out the webpage. And unfortunately, we live in a digital age. And so we try to push to the COA to go into their newsletter. We do posters and flyers in town. We have a Facebook page, which is a new thing for the town of Hadley. I know the departments have it. I know that there's the community page, but that is not a town page. The town of Hadley has a Facebook page at this time that we're trying to use very actively. For that, we can look at doing an insert about a newsletter. There's also, if I can, there's limited staff and limited time. So doing a newsletter would be amazing and wonderful. And I personally would love to do it, but I mean, there's bandwidth.
Well, and
depth.
But maybe this is, again, we're talking about volunteering. It would be a wonderful thing for a volunteer to do. I know there are other municipalities who have people sign up for a, like an email listserv kind of thing. And so periodically the town sends out updates of just general, goings on, so to speak. So I think that's definitely something we could pursue through, volunteerism.
Just in our amendment, tell us there's a.
If you print
Yeah.
them in-
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
And you don't have to insert.
Mhm.
So you have your envelopes, they're printed already.
Mhm.
If they're not printed, just imprint the outside, one side of the envelope, say, here's where you can find out about our tenant, and that way you're not physically, you're using envelopes that have the message on.
Yeah. And the other thing with just the property taxes is we wind up missing renters because the landlords are the ones who are getting the bills and the water bill. But again, hey, if we can get the majority of property owners, we can figure out a way to get to the tenants too.
Completely very valid and good suggestions. And I already have written down list of volunteers, opportunities and newsletters. So we are taking notes here tonight and we are here.
You want another plug? In some written mail fashion to encourage people to sign up for the Nixle notices?
I can add that.
Can you tell people how to do that, Jennifer, right now?
I would love to tell people how to do that right now. There are two options for signing up for Nixle alerts. You can right now pull out your cell phone and text 888-777 and put in the word Hadley and send that message out. You will get a text message back immediately telling you that you have been registered. If you would prefer, you can go to the town website, and on the town website, it says emergency notifications. If you click on that, you can again put in your email and your phone number and you will receive those. And when you're on the town website, please go to town news and announcements and sign up for that as well. And we will email you all sorts of great things, like when your tax bills are due and holidays at town hall are closed, or events that are happening here at the senior center that for like this event. It also has a town meeting calendar of all town meetings. So we are trying to get it out there. We're always open to more suggestions how, but that's how you do it.
What was that number?
888-777. Type in the word happily.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Put it to it, commercials.
Atta girl.
Order now.
Okay, it appears to be relatively close to 8 o'clock and everybody's going to turn into a pumpkin shortly. So I thank you all very much for coming. You dedicated souls, you. And see if you can convince anybody in town that you know to come to the next one.
And the next one is?
The next one is February 11th. Is that right?
Sure.
Okay, same time, same place.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thanks again.